Today, coffee cultivation in Vietnam has become one of the country's greatest assets. But looking at it through a political ecology lens, we will show how this success isn't shared evenly across all of Vietnam. Instead, we see that ethnic minority coffee growers are being unfairly excluded from state policies promoting coffee growth. The government came up with 25 new economic zones in the Dak Lak province by 1985 and started the Doi Moi economic reforms towards a socialist-oriented market economy. They started to deregulate agricultural marketing and legalize private ownership of land through certificates via the 1993 land law. The government also implemented the fixed cultivation and sedentarization program, which discouraged shifting cultivation and nomadic behaviors, declaring traditional tribal land as state property for redistribution. But this is not a recent phenomenon. When the French colonizers brought coffee to Vietnam in the 19th century, they confiscated land in the highlands and cleared forests to farm coffee and rubber, all for export back to Europe. Let's have Nie, a coffee farmer of the Idi ethnic minority living in the Dak Lak province, talk about how these policies have affected her.
They call us wasteful and lazy and help the kin migrate to our land. They look down on our subsistence farming and way of life and told us to look to the kin as an example.
What Nie has just described is what we call in situ displacement. In situ displacement describes how a community can be displaced from their land without physically being removed from the space. Let's take an example from the Idi and kin groups to see how this can happen. Following the colonial period, Vietnam's policies continue to label swidden cultivation practices of the Idi as destructive, undermining native agroforestry and forest farming behaviors of the Idi. While the Idi population turned to coffee production, they still preserved some of their cultural practices of swidden and subsistence cultivation, which resulted in reduced profits from coffee production despite holding larger areas of land. Conversely, the kin population was not affected, as they came from the lowlands, intending to produce coffee upon migrating. Furthermore, Idi families were generally larger, had lower levels of education, and relied on family members for labor, reducing the profit per capita and opportunities for networking or professional labor. In contrast, the kin population had smaller nuclear families, higher levels of education, hired professional laborers who provided greater work expertise, and thus had wider market networks, leading to greater profits. Moreover, while the kin are more likely to change crops, borrow, or look for off-farm employment, the Idi's reliance on cash crops make them vulnerable to market fluctuations. Current land laws unequally allocate land based on households. This was the result of the government's intervention, as they came in and introduced the concept of commodifying land, overriding the cultural aspects of land that was previously adopted by the Idi. This is known as the politics of knowledge, where new technical and social knowledge is produced by the national hegemon, thus impacting the way people live their lives. Thus, the government inadvertently led the less educated Idi farmers to their own demise when they started seeing land as fast cash rather than sustainable revenue. Moreover, red books or certificates for land use rights were only given to senior male members in the household. Unlike the kin, who had male heads of households, Idi households were matriarchal. The red books subvert the hierarchy in the Idi culture and families and force them to adopt practices that aligned with the ethnic majority.
The 1970s were a great time for my family when my grandfather migrated here along with the Eddy. He was given lots of grants and money by the government to cultivate the land for coffee and other cash crops, which we still grow today.
The highlands today, like Dak Lak province, are packed full of people, especially the kin. The forests are gone, our biodiversity is gone, and all that is left? Bad soil, erosion, and landmines. All the fertilizers used to grow coffee is living chemicals in our soil. They look down on our subsistence farming, but at least we knew how to keep the lands thriving. We let the land lie fallow and grew all of our own food. But those days are long gone.
The transition away from shifting cultivation to market-based agriculture also signals politics of environmental change through the metabolic rift. Due to unsustainable farming and land use practices, such as using chemical fertilizers and mechanization, human-nature relationships were thus transformed, leading to the separation and distortion of natural cycles. This neglects the natural processes of regeneration and led to environmental degradation in the long run. Although the Idi were not physically removed from their land, they faced in-situ displacement from government policies through exclusive land laws and policies which are not aligned with their cultural practices. The promotion of coffee export, stemming from the French colonial rule, has led to extensive environmental degradation along with the dilution of their ethnic culture. It is therefore important for governments to account for the exclusionary nature of development policy and planning.